you are probably going to get sued. That's just the reality. And I'm sorry to have to be the one to bring you the news. I mean, they shoot the messenger, right? But the truth is, pretty much all websites in America today are not accessible to the blind or to the deaf. This is Randy Kirk with Small Business Daily, and today we're going to be interviewing Jorge Pacheco of Culture Connect. And Jorge is an expert in ADA websites.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here with you today. As always, an honor to share this space with you and everybody that's listening to this. ADA compliance and especially ADA website compliance, it's a very, very murky and gray topic because the fact that it's not a law makes it hard for businesses to actually take it seriously. And the trend since 2016, 17 with websites that are not compliant just keeps going up and up. And we've seen an increase, especially during COVID-19, because of the increase of usage of the internet. I mean, pretty much everybody went, into their homes and just kind of like stay there. They've been staying there for over a year, and all we've had to do is just be on the internet, and that's caused more and more lawsuits over 2019 and 20.
Yeah. So Jorge, okay, so maybe that's what's causing more lawsuits, but the ADA problem has been around for a while. And those who don't watch me all the time, don't watch this channel all the time, I am a graduate of UCLA Law. And so I'm going to say right now that nothing that's said on this program is legal advice because I never took the bar. But it's business advice about a legal matter. I'm allowed to give business advice about a legal matter, as is Jorge. So what we're going to be talking about today is this ADA issue. The ADA issue has been around for a while. Access to retail stores needed to be available to people in wheelchairs. Their restrooms needed to have access for wheelchairs. And the access issue is fair and reasonable. We can all understand why people would want to have a certain law that would say handicapped individuals, disabled individuals should be able to have access. Nothing wrong with that. But the problem is that you have, I call them sharks, lawyers that did take the bar, unlike me. You have these lawyers who are basically hiring individuals who are disabled in order to gin up problems and fill their coffers. That's basically what it boils down to. I have experience with the very thing that Jorge is talking to you about today. One of my clients in California with a local business received a threat of a lawsuit from a lawyer in New York who was representing a client in New Jersey who in no way was ever going to be using my client in Los Angeles for any of his services. The New York attorney said, "Hey, I'm just trying to help the disabled. I'm just for them, and I want to be a good guy. I want to help them out. So you need to change your website. Let us know when you change it." Well, we changed the website. And then the lawyer said, "Well, but we have these costs and expenses." So he didn't care whether we changed the website or not. He cared whether or not he could scam money off of us. Would that be, Jorge, is that kind of what you're hearing out there?
Yeah. And let me rewind a little bit, Randy, going back to, how all this ADA issue is going on. And, the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, passed 31 years ago in 1990. And that's what you were talking about with the actual brick and mortar businesses, retail stores, restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, it wasn't until exactly 2016 that lawyers kind of like their bulb lit up, and they're like, oh, we can make more money suing websites that are not ADA compliant. So again, since 2016, so again, just do the math, and you get how many years this has been going on. They've been targeting commercial businesses that don't have their websites ADA compliant. And what the most common types of businesses that are hit with lawsuits are in the hospitality industry, like hotels and restaurants and things like that, and retail shops, meaning like anything that has to do with e-commerce. Another issue here is, like you said, with your client, and they're targeting smaller business owners. The reason is because they know that if they go after the big companies, they have their team of lawyers. And even if something happens like what happened with Domino's or with the Beyonce website or things like that, that they still get some money out of it and they had to change the website, it's easier money if they go after the smaller fish, because the smaller business doesn't have the capability. For example, here in California, it's $500 per violation. So that means if you have an image that's not ADA compliant, that's $500. If you have a second image, that's another $500. If you have, and so on and so on. So you get the gist of it. So if they go to a smaller or a small business owner, they're not going to have the cash flow or the economic means to be able to pay so many violations. And normally a regular website will have at least between 100 to 500 or more violations. So just do the math there. When that happens, what they do is they just go for the settlement. Yeah. And the settlement is a minimum of $5,000, easy $5,000. So the small business owner has to pay not only the $5,000 for the settlement, but also they have to pay for the work of fixing the website. Right. And make sure that you test it so it's up to the ADA compliance. So there are quite a lot of different expenses here that a small business owner has to take into consideration when they think about ADA compliance and just ignoring it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, once you make a website ADA compliant, because these things change so much all the time, it's for providers like us, it's hard to guarantee that next month is not going to be, it's still going to be compliant. So that's why it is important that this is an ongoing effort and an investment, which is better than having to pay $75,000, $250,000 in a chunk, just because you ignore and decided to not mitigate the risk of getting into a lawsuit.
Yeah. So like I said, this is real. It happened to my client. So we know that it's a reality. It's kind of the other thing that we in marketing were running into all the time with these folks suing over copyright on pictures, and that was a real scam for a while. And I had several of my clients that were hit with those lawsuits, and I have a technique for dealing with that, which I'll share with with people off the video sometime. But none of my clients have ever paid a dime on those. But let's talk about some of the details here, Jorge. I think the way that I can help my audience the most is by pointing out some of the most obvious and glaring things that we would all agree it's a good thing. We need to make our websites compliant because we don't want individuals coming on our website that can't use it. I mean, let's face it. Even if we're just not being happy, sweet, loving people, they're customers. We don't want any customer not to be able to use our website. So, what are the most glaring issues that come up?
Well, I think to answer that question, Randy, the first question that I would like to answer is whether, as a small business owner, when we hear about all these things, we just hear expense, or extra expense that I don't need to incur in. So the first question that comes to a small business owner mind is, does my website really need to be ADA compliant? And there are 3 questions that derive from this question. And if you answer yes to any of these questions, then the answer is yes, it does need to be ADA compliant. The first question is, are you a business that benefits the public? If your business benefits the public in whatever way, then your website needs to be ADA compliant. Are you a local, state, or government agency? Or do you do business with a local, state, or government agency? If you answer yes, then you need to have your website ADA compliant. And specifically for this one, the compliance need to be at the highest level, because you're dealing with the government.
Right.
And this one is the one that's a little in the grayer part of it, or side of it, and is, are you a private employer with 15 or more employees? If the answer is yes, then you need to have your website ADA compliant. The reason I say it's a gray area, it's because ADA website compliance is not a law yet. It's really up to the judge to interpret all the guidelines, because they're right now, they're not law. It's not any law. They're guidelines. Right. So it's up to them. So if the judge interprets it, that even if you have 10 employees and not 15, you still have to have that website ADA compliant, then it's up to the judge to say that. So that's why we make emphasis that it doesn't matter if you're just a sole proprietor. If you're a sole proprietor, you're still under risk.
And let's face it, my client was a sole proprietor. Okay, neither one of us looked up to find out what the rules were, because when you get a letter from a lawyer, especially a thick one, and you get this thick letter from a lawyer, your first reaction is, oh, what am I going to do? Do I have to call a lawyer and start spending $400 or $500 an hour to find out what my situation is? Do I just ignore the letter? There's all kinds of possible ways to respond to that letter, but none of them are good. So if you're ADA compliant, at least that allows you to think, well, the first thing I'm going to do is respond to the letter by saying, my website is ADA compliant. What are you talking about? So
yes,
you're probably going to put off. Let's face it. These scammy lawyers, they're looking for the fast buck. Okay. They are not looking for they're not looking to go to court. They're not looking for something protracted. They can pick up, a few $1,000s after a couple of phone calls. They're happy. They're on to the next.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are reports that there are law firms. They have a dedicated team to harvest websites. I mean, if you have a team and you get, let's say even just 25, 50 websites that you serve, then, that multiply that for $5,000 each website. So it's easy bucks for them. And that's what they do all day, every day, in and out. Right. So it's frustrating, for the small business owner, because we don't have the money or the means to be, worrying about these type of things.
So Jorge, but let's talk about some of the specifics. So I've got a small retail store, or I'm a CPA, and I've got a website. What are just so that people can understand what it is that we're talking about? Mm-hmm. What are the big issues on their website that they're probably not doing correctly?
The most common complaints in lawsuits is the lack of alt or alternative text for images, video captions or CCs, and text as images. So those three are the main complaints or the main reasons that lawyers are serving small business owners. So if anything, if you have to do the minimum and nothing else, make sure that all and every one of your images on your website have alt text. And what that means is, it's called alt text or alternative text. What that means is that when you hover over your mouse over any image on the website, then a little text comes up explaining what the image is about. Okay, and this is because of all the different visual impairments that people have, and there are a bazillion different ones.
Right, and let's face it, some of the pictures on your website are just there for an emotional impact. Some of them are there because you just thought it would look nice to lay the page out with the picture someplace. Some of those, but some of those pictures have something to do with the actual service or products that you're performing.
Exactly.
And so if the individual has limited vision or no vision, they are not able to tell what it is that you're talking about, and it gets in the way of their being able to adequately use your website. So these alt text that go on to which every time that you're laying an image onto any kind of a page on a website, the website platform offers you to put the alt text in. It's always there. And most people just ignore it because they don't know what it is to begin with. They don't know why.
Exactly. It's just there, but yeah.
Whatever, I'm going to do that.
Another field, but
yeah. So that's one. And so again, this is an advantage to the website owner, and it's not at all difficult to put those alt texts on. On the other hand, I did a little research on this, and the way you say it is even important.
Yes, because I mean, if you have a picture of, say, for example, you're a restaurant and you have a picture of this delicious, juicy burger that has all this, is showing all these different ingredients, and your alt text just says burger.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's not explanatory enough to be, and you can get sued just because of that fact. So it would be best if you really explain what it is, brioche, bun burger with Angus, whatever. And I mean, everything that would make someone that is listening to their reading device or reading the little legend on as you hover over the image, like really water their mouths at just listening and reading that, even though they can't see it. Right.
And there's also an SEO advantage to using alt text.
Yes.
So this isn't just something that's going to help the sight impaired. It's also going to help your website to be easier to find when people are looking up images. So there's a lot of SEO advantage to this as well. So then the second one you said was YouTube videos, or videos, any kind of video. So if you have a video on your website, it needs to have two different elements. Is that how I understood
Correct.
it?
Yes. So you need to make sure that, well, as a minimum requirement, you need to have your CCs, your closed captions. That would be the minimum requirement. The next step to that would be to have your transcripts. And you can have your transcripts in two ways. You can have them actually in the body copy of your site or whatever you have your video. And or in addition, you can also have a transcript document that the user can download and play on their own device. So there are a couple of different ways to approach that. And the last one,
well,
go ahead.
But let me also respond back to that. So besides helping folks that have some kind of impairment, everybody in the industry, and I'm a marketing guy, everybody in the industry knows that if you're not putting your subtitles on the bottom of the page clearly and easy to read, you're hurting your chances of everybody paying attention to that video, because a huge percentage of people are watching your video in the office, on the train, at the beach, someplace where they don't want to have the sound turned up. And
Mute,
so,
yes.
you want people to be able to read that or that subtitle. And actually, for me, two things I'll tell you right now. As a user, I will read that subtitle for a while before I decide to turn it on, because I don't want to be bothered to turn it on and start to listen to the whole thing. I'll just read it for a while and then, oh, I think I'll listen to this. And number two, I prefer to read over watch video anytime. So the entire transcript is right under the video. I'll read the transcript every single time rather than watch the video. So there's a lot of advantages. These are all good advantages that you get out of taking these steps.
Yes, and like you said, Randy, working with an ADA website that's compliant, the chances of increasing your ranking with, and talking about SEO, the relationship of your website with your social media platforms is easier. So it just affects a lot of different things. Having your code clean, by having your website compliant, all this is like a domino effect, and it just helps out in different places of your digital marketing.
So what is that third one then? You said there was a third one that's a big one.
See, yeah, the third one is text as images, and many people use an image, say that's a promotion, like I'm just gonna say 2 for 1, buy now and this is the discount code, and they put that as an image on their website. And even for social media, Facebook has a minimum or a maximum, I should say, text to image ratio, that of 20%. It's for website images is somewhat the same. I mean, you should not at all possible not have any kind of text as an image, because it won't be readable by any device that a person with an impairment would have or would use. So you need to make sure that you do as much as you can to have any text as live text. And I know that many small businesses, owners or managers, they just get married to that font that they're using in their logo, and it's their brand, and they don't want to part from it. And then they end up creating it as an image for headlines throughout the website. But what's happening is that not only you're hurting your SEO, etc., but you're also hurting your compliance and how people with impairment can read your website.
Jorge, there's two things people can do right this minute if they want to. They can get their website tested for free, right?
Correct.
So you have a website that they can go, or a website they can go to and just drop the URL in. What's that website?
Yes, the website is ada.cultureconnect, both with K's.com. Culture, KULTURE, connect, KONNECT.com. ada.cultureconnect.com.
Yeah, so they can go there. They drop the URL right into the spot that's available there for them. In a few minutes, they get a report, and the report will lay it right out. I ran the report. I've seen the report. It tells you line by line by line, here's the things that need correcting. And the first thing that you go is, because you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do all this? So what's the second thing that they can do if they think that they want to fix their website, which is not only going to fix it, again, remember, it's not just going to fix it for the visually impaired or the hearing impaired, it's going to fix it for every client, because all of these things are going to help you with your SEO and with the engagement for everybody. So Jorge, what's the other thing that they can do?
Well, I think that the next best step would be to figure out a couple of things. You know, if it's an old website, then the question is whether your website is due for a redesign. If it is due for a redesign, then it should be less expensive than trying to remediate a current website, because you're starting the code from scratch. So you can work with your own code. You don't have to meddle with another person's code and fix it and clean it up. So just make sure that you ask yourself that question. You know, how old is my website, and is it due for a redesign? Second, if you say, oh, it's not due for a redesign quite yet, well, ask yourself a second question: is it responsive? Because responsiveness is a big part of ADA compliance. If your website still looks awesome to you and you think it's still trendy and you still think it's up to date in terms of design and looks, but it's not responsive, meaning it doesn't behave well on a mobile device like a cell phone or a smartphone or a tablet, then you need to rethink your position about your website. Also, if your website is like packed with interface functionalities, interface functionalities are not ADA friendly. For example, if I have things flying in and out all the time, if I hover over images and the image does something extraordinary, if there are colors or videos everywhere, like all those things are not ADA compliant, and most likely will get you into violations. And the last one, are you able to manage your whether it is your current website, or are you going to be able to manage and keep up to date your new website easily? If maintaining an ADA compliant website is complex, but if you have the resources and you can get anybody on your team trained, then you should be gold, because it's time consuming and not hard, but time consuming more than anything. Once everything's set up and you want to keep the machine well oiled, it's going to be easy enough. If you don't want to redo your website, then remediation has to happen. And when I say remediation, that means that either someone like Randy or Culture Connect will come into the back end of your website, and based on different reports, we will start fixing the code. Now, AI reports like the ones we run will probably help you fix between 25 to 75% of your issues. If you want to go a step ahead and have your website at least 95 to 99% ADA compliant, you need to make sure that you run actual human tests. And with human tests, what I mean is that a person with visual impairment and hearing impairment will come in and actually test your website, go page by page, link by link, and they will take notes, and then based on that report, you will continue doing remediation.
Well, Jorge, I think maybe we've convinced a few folks out there. This is a serious issue. You are going to get sued. I started out that way. I'm going to say it again. We've seen it happen. Jorge and I both have friends, as I've already told you, who have already gotten the letters. You need to really address this issue. It's so quick. You can just immediately go to that website, the ada.cultureconnect.com. Yeah, you can go, just throw your URL in there and just check it. It only takes a couple seconds. So, Jorge, I'm really glad to have had you on today. Folks, if you liked this kind of content, this was a combination. This was like a legal issue. This is like a consumer issue. This is an SEO issue. We hit on a lot of different stuff today. If you like this kind of content, please push the like button. Please subscribe. Please hit notify so you can find out what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. So this is Randy Kirk with Small Business Daily. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.